Who is the most masculine Democrat right now in America?
And there's
Mayor Pete.
Is that a gay joke?
No, Mayor Pete. No, well, no, it's just that he's not particularly masculine. Nobody's like, oh, Mayor Pete, he's a badass.
And what you have on the left, especially with this whole Kamala coming off of this election, is that you see that the left, the only time that they praised men is when men praised women. Right. It was never them praising men for just being great to this country. It wasn't ever praising men because you are part of the armed forces. It wasn't praising men because you're out there taking your families and you're doing traditional roles. It was none of that. The only time people on the left ever praised men is because men praised women. Clay Travis was a panelist on this, I guess, what's it called? Is a discussion on gender relations and Tradwives, alpha males, gender relations. Anyways, they had a conversation about, alpha males and the lack of it in America today and why that is. Anyways, Clay Travis talks about this. His part of this kind of went viral because he kind of called out the Democratic Party. Not a Democratic Party for not having masculine men. So we're gonna watch a little bit of that, and you guys tell us what you think.
Magdalene, I see you shaking your head. You write about sex. You've talked to everyone from incels to, I'm sure, your friends who are writers who live in Brooklyn. What are the differences you're seeing in how people are talking about this?
Well, I think it's really interesting you brought up that this environment here might have a lot of really intellectually motivated people who are delaying gratification towards a specific end goal. I think that culturally, though, we are seeing a rise of people delaying gratification of having sex, forming relationships, starting families, whatever, toward no specific end. I think that there's a lot of people not having sex and not forming relationships because instead they're, spending a lot of time online.
Sorry to stop it so early, but I when I heard her say that, I thought, well, that is true.
Well, a lot of
there's no specific goal anymore. Back in the 50s and 60s, the goal was marriage, kids, to have a comfortable life, a nice house, going a couple of vacations a year with your family. These were the goals. Right now, it's just kind of like relationships are not a thing.
Especially when it comes to the internet has really taken over the minds of people, and so for a lot of young men, they have become addicted to set porn online because it's easy access. And what they're saying, what they have said before, I think even Jordan Peterson said this, that they use it because they don't have to get turned down by women, but they can still get sexual gratification by looking at a woman they'd want to sleep with, but they don't actually have to go out and ask her out. And this all happened because of a lot of the inboxing culture, because when we were younger, you met people in person. My mother's generation was the same way, and then
the boy meets girl.
But you guys were not afraid to come up and get turned down.
Right.
They didn't walk away and call you a B because you didn't want to date them. They just took their loss and they went on and found another girl. But now, guys, because feminism has taken over and because the internet has taken over, boys are not as confident as they were for their fathers and their grandfathers anymore. They're afraid to be let down. They're very feelings oriented. They play way too many video games. They're on the internet way too long, and they don't have that sort of reality of dealing with disappointment. And I would say it's the same with women, but in a different way. Women are being empowered artificially. So they think they can face the world, but if you took off the training wheels, most of them all of them really, would fall on their face because the only reason they're becoming successful is because of DEI programs and then TV propaganda, where boys aren't getting that same propaganda, and so they're falling into porn.
But okay, we'll bring you in here, Clay, since you were started on a triumphalist note, and when you're on a podcast, which you've done successfully for so long, it's better to be gloating than to be suffering. It makes for a much better vibe on the podcast. So what do you say about all this? You have people calling into your show, so you can read the room of people who listen.
Well, so what I would say in general is I don't disagree with a lot of what she just said. I think we have a profound disconnect between how people are making choices and why they're making those choices that are making them unhappy. I've got 3 boys. And I don't know that any of you listen to your parents at all. My boys, it doesn't matter what I do for a living. I'm just, they're dork of a dad. But they're 17, they're 14, and they're 10. And I'll give you two different angles of things that I talk about with them. A few years ago, my 10-year-old at the time, we walked into Target. I think we were going to get baseball or basketball cards. My boys are big card collectors. And there was an entire section right when we walked in of girl power shirts. My 10-year-old said, Dad, they would never make boy power shirts. And some of you who might be in your 30s or 40s or 50s might be like, girl power, yay. I think it's important to understand that other people who, like my kids, were born around 2010 are growing up in a different era where they're basically being told not that girls are good, that boys are bad.
Not that girls are good, but that boys are bad. That is the damage that the girl power movement thing has done to society.
Right. This is what I was saying about, or just what I was saying earlier, was that the psyche of women has been charged artificially, where women have been walking around saying things like "woman king," a woman can do this. They can, they can be firefighters, they can be clergy members, like be a pastor. They can do everything a man can do, but boys are not getting the same download. They're getting that they are toxic masculinity, that they hold women back, that they need to stand back and stand down, that you're not a man unless you can hold a woman up and support her. Only men who are insecure are men who don't want to promote a woman like Kamala Harris.
Remember that whole video Kamala Harris put up during her campaign of those men that she put? Remember that video, the commercial? They were doing a commercial about how strong they are as men because they believe in bigging up a woman. They believe in feminism, men being feminists, and men feminists are a thing or whatever. They were really riding the coattails really of women and saying, I'm going to put them on a pedestal, but meanwhile, I'm going to demean us down here. So now we have our empowered women and then men who follow them. And that is out of order. That is out of order.
And like again, Bernie Sanders famously called himself a male feminist. Gloria Steinem pinned that on him years ago. And then you have Barack Obama and Michelle getting mad at black men during the election, saying that black men, because they were starting to vote for Trump, and they did, I think 24% voted for Trump, that they were, he lectured them on why you need to follow a woman.
Right.
And this is going on and on and on and on. And it's going to make our country less safe because men are stronger than women physically, and they are able to make decisions differently than women because they are logical. But there is this thing. What he's saying is that girls are getting all the press, and men are being oppressed.
And they're like, what have I ever done that's bad? I'm 10. I don't even get to choose what I eat for dinner. How am I responsible for the decline of all of society? So that's something I think it's cognizant to think about. When people say, why did young men overwhelmingly swing, according to the Wall Street Journal, 27 points in the direction of Donald Trump between 2020 and 2024? Frankly, I think a lot of young men are over the bull in their mind that they're responsible for everything that's ever been wrong in the history of Western civilization. One of my kids' friends said, like when I go to school now, all they tell us is that white men are bad. And they're like, my mom doesn't even let me pick what tennis shoes I wear to school, right? Like, how can I be that bad? I have no agency myself. Second part of this, and this is where they really roll their eyes. Everybody wants to talk about how the environment's collapsing and climate change is going to destroy us all. I actually think it's because we're not having kids, right? Kids, whatever you think of your own particular political life, are actually an incredible endorsement of optimism. There aren't very many times where you have a baby and you think, oh, you're very excited when you become a dad or a grandpa or a mom or a grandma or an aunt or uncle, brother, sister. Babies represent the future and optimism. And when we're not having them, it's not just the United States, by the way, we're actually doing far better than incredible countries like Italy and Japan and South Korea, which are on a trajectory in the lifetime of some of you, particularly you younger guys and gals out here, where basically the country's not going to exist. How does that happen? I think one of the things that's occurring is there is a profound disconnect between men and women. I think you can see it across society. And I think it's why so many people are so profoundly unhappy. And so when I say we're back, I think to a certain extent, part of what this election has represented is, are there men who are jerks and assholes and toxic? Yes. But there are women who are jerks and assholes and toxic too. Yet we've allowed society to teach a lot of men, hey, toxic masculinity is a thing. I never hear anything about toxic femininity.
I was watching Fox News the other day, and they were putting this poll that came out. Liberal women are the most unhappy in our country today. This is like a big poll they did over a few states of different liberal women and conservative women, and most of the reason why is because their resistance against having children, having families, also their need to want to be empowered and have this a high-powered career. They've put that before family, and it's always been our opinion. And understand, I'm talking to you as a woman who does not have kids and is not married.
Right.
I am conservative, however, so I do understand how that can make a woman sad if you are resisting. I'm not resisting it. I haven't gotten it, right? But these women are actually resisting it, and they're saying no. This career is so much more important than this family thing that you guys are talking about, whatever. You know, they're happy about the abortion thing. They're happy about not populating the country, and you know, they're actually happy about they want us to believe that. But the truth is that they aren't happy. We see oftentimes that a lot of liberal women are not. They're mad, angry, upset constantly, right? And I think it has a lot to do with their resistance to just being women. So when he says that, you know, we need to populate, it makes people more happy. It makes people, you know, having a family values or makes people, you know,
I mean,
happier.
well, we made money God and made family not important. I mean, every time you turn on anything, it's always talking about being the power couple or, you know, trying to be like Elon Musk and have all these jets. And we care so much about the way Beyonce and Jay-Z are living, just not about their marriage.
Right.
At all. No one really cares about the marriage. They care about looking at the Kardashians and the wealth that they show, all these, reality TV, when that became really popular. But what I think is like, when you look at these angry women, especially if you go to like abortion protests, these women not only sound bad, but they look awful. They look very bad. I mean, black, white, Hispanic, they all look awful women. And most liberal women do look really bad. They have a bad attitude. They physically don't look unhealthy, and they don't look good. And but to me, you can see this, because they always say that there is a fruit that comes from a tree that's being planted. And when you plant this kind of chaos, this sinful type chaos, the fruit is going to be angry women and angry men. So you've got the red pill movement and you've got the feminist movement. The red pill movement was going to happen because the feminist movement was just taking over. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so what we have now are angry men and angry women. And I think that all of these people know this is why Trump won. And the reason why Barack Obama had to go to men and shut them down is because deep down internally, you watch these angry women, you watch these angry men, or men who want to vote for Trump. Deep down in their soul, they know something's wrong. Because we have it built into us. We know that we're supposed to procreate. We know we're supposed to get married. Women know they're supposed to have children. Men know they're supposed to protect. Deep down in our soul, we all do know that. It's in our DNA for us to do it. So then when we don't do it, we lash out in other ways.
Also toxic. Also, this, to his point about toxic masculinity, that is a term that I think we've mentioned this probably a dozen times about toxic masculinity being a bunch of BS. That is not a thing. Men are being criticized and put down for something that is not misogynist, is not chauvinistic. It's just that they are men, and that is just being a man. Now, oftentimes from liberals, we'll get my sister and I get called what's that thing they always call us? Pygmies. They say you two are pygmies, right? And I didn't know what that was at first, but pygmies are just these women. I mean, I'm sure you guys know. They're just women who are overly approving men to get picked, I guess. You know what I mean? I guess that's what it is, right? And so, and I'm okay with these terms. I don't care about any of that part of it. What I'm trying to say is that it's not so much about pick me. You know what I mean? It's more of society. Like, in my personal, me getting picked is really, men we are in control of sex, women are in control of sex, men in control of marriage. Right. So there is no pick me. It's just what it is, right? The reason why we say all that is because we're trying to help get things back in order. So it's not about my personal trying to get picked or whatever. It is more just about society. And I truly believe, like in my heart of hearts, I truly believe that it's very important for women to take up for men and men that are alpha males, or I know it's a buzzword, but men who are strong leaders, men who have a conservative mindset, Christian men. It is very important for women specifically to stand up for them and stand, and say, listen, these men are not being chauvinistic. They are just being men.
Or like you said, that people are saying that you're overdoing it, trying to tell men that they were.
Yeah.
It's just like if boys did not vote, or sorry, if grown men did not vote for Trump overwhelmingly, because he lost, he had a big female following.
Yeah.
So, she had more of a man problem getting men to vote for her than he had a woman problem getting to vote for him. But if all these young men were now voting for Trump and they're in that camp, then what I'm saying is right. That men feel devalued.
And we're trying to make sure that, at least on our end, that we are making sure men understand that you are important in this world. Okay? All men are important in this world. And, even like with lefty men, I just encourage you to not be so liberal, because that is putting your balls in a vice.
Terry's wife exists.
I think there's a lot online about toxic femininity.
Not enough.
So, okay.
enough.
So let me break that down. Two things.
There's a lot of stuff there, but
The first
yes.
thing you said about toxic, like your boys being sick of men. I have teenage boys too. So your boys being sick of hearing toxic masculinity, everything's my fault. Curious to hear from you two, like, is it time to retire that term? What about the term toxic masculinity? What do we do with it? Has it done us any good?
I mean, I think one of the problems is that a lot of young men don't have great models for behavior. One of the things, in the conversations that I have are young women will be like, the men that are asking us out, they're doing kind of weird stuff. They're not socialized in a way, like, you don't talk to someone you're interested in romantically the same way you talk to your bros. Like you want to express interest. You want to sort of, be, demonstrate that you're willing to, go the extra mile, whatever. And so a lot of the conversations that I've heard have been like in that way, that they're not having these kind of conversations with their dads about, hey, this is how you should act. And then the culture is giving them very mixed messages, right? It's sort of saying, well, you need to be really careful about how you act. Holding the door open is not okay. That is, a negative thing now. And so, like, there's a real confusion, I think, for a lot of young men about, well, what do I do? And so I think the results of that is a bit of stasis, that you have people just sort of saying, well, I'm just gonna take a step back. I don't want to get in trouble. I'm just gonna focus on myself. That's easier to do, whether it's academics or, financially, or, focus on my physique. I can do all that easily without running into these problems.
Magdalene, do you have any views on the term toxic masculinity, like whether it did more harm than good, whether it's like we have to come up with more interesting ways to talk about this?
Yeah, I think that it is unfortunately something that became really flattened, and people began to use toxic masculinity as a catch-all for masculinity writ large. And I think that there's been a conflation there of masculinity itself being toxic, which I do think has had some of the consequences that you're talking about. I do think that increasingly in my circles, I am seeing more of a discussion around toxic femininity possibly being a thing. But I do think overall, kind of as to what you were saying, that the way that we understand how we are supposed to be a man or how we are supposed to be a woman, even if those are ideals we want to strive toward, there's not a coherent message in what any of that even means anymore.
Right. So the picture that you all are painting are like men are somewhat beleaguered, like they're confused, they don't really know what the message is.
Also, I think that men are not somewhat, I think a lot of, especially young men, are confused a little bit because the behaviors of women. So now we have to call that part out, right? Because the behaviors of women it's changed so drastically over time. Women today, not all, but most women today are completely out of line. They talk out of turn. They're very vulgar. They're sexually explicit. it's like there's no modesty of any kind. I'm not even talking about being buttoned up here. I'm just talking about just the speech, the way women talk today is very vulgar. And I think that a lot of men, young men, see that and they're just like, well, how am I going to open a door for that? Why would I want to go and, their options with women is pretty bleak when it comes to the behaviors of women. When you look at the contrast between women today.
I watch a show on YouTube by a YouTuber. His name is Beckett Cook, and Beckett Cook is a gay man who left the gay lifestyle, and he has a show now. He's also a believing Christian, and he used to, but he worked in Hollywood. He still is in LA. But he wrote he was a writer, and then he became like a production person. But he started off in LA to become a writer. He knows all these famous people, and he wrote a segment. He wanted to write or pitched a segment to Sex and the City, the show Sex and the City, and Darren Star's gay. And
he's a producer. He's a producer of Sex and the City, by the way.
Producer, yeah. And so, but all the writers are too gay men. And Beckett at that time was a practicing gay man. And he said, and he did a show not too long ago, and he was talking about the fact that Sex and the City really changed a lot of the way women talk and the way that they act. And he said, if you really watch how the women are, they act more like gay men than actual women.
They do.
And so women are now vulgar talking, mostly to their tributes to that show.
Yeah.
And how women they care about sex all the time, sleep around with everybody. They have very vulgar talking.
I feel like Sex and the City was a culture.
And it changed women though.
It did make you feel like it was like everyone was trying to be something.
Everybody
even if you're from New York.
Yeah.
Even if you were from New York. Just trying to be a version of those women.
Yeah, right. And so it really made sense. I can remember, I think he was talking to Vodi Bakum on his show when he was talking about this. And Vodi was shocked. He's like, that's interesting.
Yeah,
he was like, that show, he said, because that show changed a lot of women in the way they go. He's like, it was a huge culture. And he was like, but I know a lot of the writers on the show, and my pitch didn't go. His episode that he pitched didn't go. He said, but I know all the writers are mostly gay men. And he was just like, and basically it's just gay men writing through women. And then you've got these 4 women who are really just acting like gay men. And
a lot of gay men, not all but most, are sexually explicit. So if you guys know, I know a lot of gay men, and they're sexually explicit a lot of times, And so I think that when you look at the characters of Sex and the City, those women were sexually explicit, and then not even that, the people who watched them became that way, and now here we are. Culture, we always say this though that celebrity, TV shows, music, this all changes culture. Culture is literally a direct connection to celebrity and things like that, whether you like it or not. That's what it is.
I think politics is downhill from culture is downhill from politics. So what the culture is, politics will start to change, which is why it's acceptable for a lot of politicians to just, like a Kamala Harris that, who doesn't have children. That would have been unacceptable, years before.
We had a young man write us. He was like in his 20s. I think he was like 24. He was young. And he was like, I like you guys' show. And I wish there was a lot of young women in his age group that act like maybe like us, or conservative in general, not just necessarily Karen and I, just conservative. And, it's just trying to find a woman is very difficult right now because the women in my age group don't behave like this. And I said to him, I was like, I would tell you that you really need to, as hard as it might be, you need to make sure that you are approaching conservative Christian women. And big highlight on Christian. Yeah. Because if the woman you're wanting is a traditional type of woman, that is 100% a conservative Christian woman, and if she's a Republican, that's probably even better because that she just has more of her political stance is going to align with her her personal way what she doesn't like. So I'm like, that would be my advice to you. It would be to start there, because when you go off into these liberal women, forget it. Forget it. They have already drank the Kool-Aid. These women are already trying to be girl bosses and girl power. Men suck. The abortions taken to the street for that. I mean, they have already fallen off. Not that they can't change. They can. I'm not saying they can't change. But I'm just saying if you're going to try to date a liberal woman, good luck there.
Yeah, but even for conservative younger women who want to be a wife, I would say I think a lot of their pushback, the reason why they get confused is because they're afraid, because the liberal women tell them that if you do things that are traditional, then you won't have a voice. This is why we needed feminism. You know what I mean? And so I think voices, I'm someone that I'm very traditional, but I have a voice. Yes. Clearly. Megyn Kelly has a voice. Nancy Mace has a voice. What was her name? Catherine Levitt. Conservative women have a voice, unless you can see that we do, as a point, we just do not believe in dividing the sexes and trying to, leave God and, we don't need the government all in our lives. We'd rather have a man taking care of us than the government. There are things like that, but feminists will try to make you, it's just like the whole pick me thing. Yes. You know what I mean? It's a way of trying to make you feel bad about what you feel naturally.
And I tell young women all the time, when young women write us all the time, and I'm like, listen, don't, y'all, I'm telling you, I don't care what anyone says. If you are a conservative young lady, be a conservative young lady. And just be in that energy.
Weirdly in this moment, or interestingly, or something I can't quite put together, is how it's translated into power, basically. Like usually if you're victimized, you don't, like right now we're at a moment of male power, like the ascendance of male power again in a way we haven't seen in a while. Can you talk about the gender divide? Like, it was a surprising thing how young men were a constituency that Trump tuned into, realized were turning towards him in a way he didn't expect.
Yeah, so I actually first wrote about this like 3 years ago, and looking at some trend data. So Gallup releases data every year, and you can track it back to the late 90s. And basically, throughout that time, there's not a huge difference between where young men and young women are politically. The similar numbers identify as liberal, similar numbers identify as democratic. And then beginning around 2016, 2017, you have this divergence, which just explodes. So young women have become much more liberal. Young men have not become much more conservative, at least according to Gallup, but they have become more Republican. So you have this interesting...
Wait, say that again, the men?
They have not identified as more conservative, but they are becoming more Republican. So from the Obama era, young men and young women were Democrats, right? For both elections, strong majorities of young men and young women voted for Barack Obama. And then you had a slow decline, right? This didn't happen in just one election. There's been a deterioration of democratic identity among young men for over 10 years. And so
are you saying specifically they turn against Democrats?
I'm saying that they are more, yes, they are more Republican now, but not necessarily because they've shifted to the right on issues like climate change or abortion or same-sex marriage. They're still well to the left of their dads and grandfathers when it comes to that stuff. And so you have this really interesting situation where this group, again, looks on paper fairly liberal in a lot of ways. And in point of fact, you had 6 in 10 young men who are moderates vote for Trump, and more than 1 in 5 liberal young men vote for Trump, right? And so if we're gonna look for explanations, we need to move beyond issues. We need to understand, like, there's something about Trump that was attractive, and then there's something about the Democratic Party, at least in its current manifestation, that was repellent.
Wanted to say that he makes good sense, that it's not so much that they're conservative, but they're Republicans. The reason why that they're becoming Republican is mostly because they felt like the GOP celebrated men more, not just the men on the conservative side, but the women also celebrate masculinity on this side. When you look at people like RFK Jr., Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, and even Trump, because he was a Democrat, these young men are watching older Democrats, established Democrats with careers, now leave a party that they've all been a part of, and they're saying, because how many young men watched Joe Rogan? Yeah. And they saw Joe Rogan have Trump on the show. They saw Kamala Harris not even go on her show. She went on Call Her Daddy podcast, a crappy, slutty podcast, feminist podcast, but she would not come on Joe Rogan for free. You know what I mean? And they saw that, and they thought, well, someone like Joe Rogan who could be my hero, or someone like RFK Jr. who still believes in climate, he's into climate change and stuff like that. He's moving to the right. You look at someone like Elon Musk, who was also a liberal, and now he's moving to the right.
It's just a more, and I've said this before, I personally, my personal belief, I think that conservative men are more masculine. That's just, that's just what I feel. All right, that's what I see. It's just my thoughts. I think that conservative men are just more masculine. And what you have on the left, especially with this whole Kamala coming off of this election, is that you see that the left, the only time that they praised men is when men praised women. Right. It was never them praising men for just being great to this country. It wasn't ever praising men because you are part of the armed forces. It wasn't praising men because you're out there taking your families and you're doing traditional roles. It was none of that. The only time people on the left ever praised men is because men praised women. If you do not praise women on that side, then you are a conservative automatically.
Right.
You know, so that's kind of like why a lot of young men are starting to feel like left out. Like, okay, we get it. Women want to work. Women want to be girl bosses. We get it. But where do we come in? Where are we?
And they feel like they had a chance with Trump.
Yeah.
And if we get him elected, he'll at least give us a chance. We're looking at people like Theo Von. Yeah. Even Barron Trump was the one who was telling Trump all these podcasts, these male podcasts. I mean, you got Elliot Hulse, you got the Hodge twins. These are all masculine men. And
Trump isn't watching Theo Von. Where do you think he got it from?
Right. And so he's, you see him going and all. And who did come out her? She want to call her daddy. She went on Club Shay Shay. You know what I mean? Like, she wasn't appealing to men at all. And in fact, when Barack Obama went over to those black men and told them that they should be ashamed, basically, for not voting for her in record numbers, he wagged his finger at them and told them, basically, you're not a man unless you can prop up a woman.
So men are just being basically tackled on that side. They're not. They don't leave them anything to feel proud of about just being male. And it's like, and on the right, the women on the right praise men, and the men on the right saying you're allowed to be a man.
You were shaking your head again. What resonates?
Yeah, I just think that there's. It's very hard for people to try to understand the motivations, of somebody they see as different to them, and I think that is, part of the phenomenon that I'm witnessing with regard to this gender war we seem to be experiencing, is kind of an unwillingness to think about why might a young man want to vote for Trump, and why might some of those reasons be something beyond loving fascism or something, for example.
They don't know what fascism is. Nobody does.
So yeah, I mean, I just think there's a lot of confusion right now about what motivates another person.
No, there's not confusion on this, though. I disagree with her on this. There's not confusion on this. Men are not voting that way. They did not vote the way of Kamala because they weren't heard. There was nothing for them over there. So there's no confusion here. The reason why they went with Trump is because he's masculine.
Yeah. This is why feminism is so. It's to me, it's like a boat. It's like a boat with holes in it. Because the truth is that if you say you want to be the equal to a man, but then the instant you have to go up against a man, you have to then somehow find shame and to poke at men and make them feel bad about being what they are in their nature. You know what I mean? Men are just providers and protectors, and that is in the DNA. That is all men. They all have that in them. And when you try to then tell women, which we all have nurturing in us, that's in our DNA. When you then try to basically troll God and start playing God yourself, what you find are people who really you can really, that's what when we make fun of liberals, it's easy to make fun of them because they make no sense.
Yeah.
There is no such thing of a non-binary person. There is no such thing really of women who don't ever want to be a mother. There is no such thing of a women. There are some, but I'm saying in general, 90% of women want to get married and have children. 90% of women want a man who is going to go downstairs when they hear something, in the middle of the night. 90% of women in the household is going to look to a man when something happens. You do not want a man who doesn't know what to do.
Our military will always be mostly men. Our police force will always be like that.
And it is. Yeah. It still is. Even with women being in the fire department, the police department, the military, all of our dirty jobs, construction workers, ranchers, all of the fishermen, all of those are still masculine jobs because men are really the ones holding up, because that is in their DNA, the strength of the country. And that's not just in America, though. That's in all countries.
The world.
I was really struck by you saying, especially that even if they are more likely to identify as Republicans, they're still far more liberal than the men of generations before them. And I think that's something that would surprise a lot of young women like myself to hear that. I was surprised.
Clay, I'm
I
sure
think-
it's no mystery to you because listening to your podcast, it's like 99.9% of people must be Trump voters. So what is it that we're missing about, or what is it that people who are not, who, as Magdalene said, people who don't understand why? That's my first question. I have a second one, but go ahead.
Okay, so what I would start with is men aspire to be bigger, stronger, and faster than we are, almost universally. That's why superheroes are popular. That's why pro athletes are popular. Who is the most masculine Democrat right now in America? Mayor Pete.
Is that a gay joke?
No, Mayor Pete. No, well, no, it's just that he's not particularly masculine. Nobody's like, oh, Mayor Pete, he's a badass. Chuck Schumer. Is anybody like, hey, Chuck Schumer holding up an avocado and a beer to talk about the Super Bowl? Is anybody like that trying to grill? Is anybody like, hey, that's a dude I want to hang out with?
But Trump's like a grandpa.
Well, hold on.
Yeah.
Trump took a bullet in his ear and immediately stood up and said, fight, fight, fight. Every man in America and most of the women out here were impressed by that, even if the women won't admit it. She's shaking her head strong. And second part of this, basically summing it up, Democrats for men are p***s and Republicans
Democrats for men
are p***s. There are no masculine men in the Democrat Party right now. And for a lot of young, people are gonna be upset, for a lot of young men, if you wanna talk about what they're looking for, there is a wide range of masculinity that's popular on the internet right now, right? Think about it. Jordan Peterson, who is super philosophical.
grandpa.
Somewhat, yes, but also super philosophical and frankly, I think almost impossible to understand at times, is wildly popular, right? I would put him on one extreme of someone who speaks to young men. On the other extreme is Andrew Tate, right? There is a huge dichotomy between what Jordan Peterson would be saying and what Andrew Tate would be saying. And there's all sorts of people in the middle. I would put myself in the middle somewhere there, right? But what they all represent is young men searching for masculinity and what it means. And unfortunately, a lot of young men don't have father figures in the household. So you said, Donald Trump may be a grandfather. A lot of people refer to him as Daddy Trump. They're looking for a strong masculine figure in their life. They may have a single parent household. It wasn't just white kids who showed up and overwhelmingly started voting for Trump. Black, Hispanic, Asian kids. I think what it represents is masculinity is under siege. We've seen religion decline. If you really want me to drive this room crazy, here you go.
The grandpa comment, because she keeps saying the grandpa thing. It's interesting that she's saying that only because when I think about grandfathers, grandpas or whatever, grandfathers, especially the ones like from yesteryear and all this, these are real men. These are men who fought in wars. These are men who are like farmers. These are men who stand up, will not back down from like a fight. These are like masculine men. They've aged because people age, and that was ageist a bit when she said that. But I'm like, I don't think she understands how much young men look up to their grandfather, their grandfathers and older men. Older men are extremely important in this world. Men who are in their 70s and 80s. We have people who are subscribed to us that are in their 70s and 80s, older men, and they are literally spitting out wise things like no other. And like they just do,
He's right when he's saying that that a lot of people are called, a lot of white boys are calling Trump Daddy Trump. I remember when Kevin Samuels was alive, everybody called him Godfather. Yeah. And there is a need because of broken families of young men, even across the board, particularly in the black community, because the single mother rate is so high, of men looking for men to lead them somewhere, and all they're getting is feminine access. I said before on one of our private videos that boys in general, are, if they're raised by a single mother, especially black young men, are raised by a mother or a grandmother. Never the grandfather, you know what I mean? And then they go to school, and most they're going to find liberal teachers that are women. And then they're going to go to church if they go. And then there's going to be 2/3 of the congregation is going to be women, and then they go on their phones and there's nothing but half naked women. And so they're hungering for what just that raw sort of masculinity that you can't buy.
That is true.
Can't buy. You know what I mean? And the problem is that wise women that who are older, who are supposed to be wiser, are these women.
That's what I'm
And
saying.
women are
yeah.
getting different downloads. Women are getting told that they're empowered because they compete with men. And that is not how you get along in the world. You have to be, men and women complement each other. We're supposed to work together, but we're supposed to do different things. Our strengths are different. You know what I mean? And so boys are not getting that strength because what they're getting told is that everything that they do that's in their DNA, there's something wrong with them.
Well, Kara, you said in a video, I think last week, you said, I don't know if I got this in there, but Kara said that, women are strong only in their femininity.
Yeah.
And that is true. Women are only strong within their femininity. Once they exit out of that and get into their masculinity, and we all know that we have to use our masculinity. Everyone has both, and but it's like women have overwhelmingly become more masculine.
Yeah.
But they don't understand that's weak.
It's weak when
It's strong when you're being a woman and a feminine woman. That is your strength in a woman. You are not a strong woman if you are operating out of masculine energy. You're only a strong woman when you're operating out of your God-given feminine energy. And when you resist that, you become like this woman here.
Yeah.
Not understanding she's an older woman and she's not even giving older men their flowers on that.
These are older women, by the way. And the question I have for liberal women is always that, is it always, because they always right fight.
Yeah.
And is there always a need to be right or to do right?
Yeah.
Just because you can, should you?
It's a need to be right, really.
This sort of need to be right. I must be smarter than a man. I must do all the things men do. But But just because you can, because a couple of years ago, it was all this thing that was going around where women trying to propose to men, and the men always just looked really awkward.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's feminized them, and they don't know what to say. A lot of those girls got turned down, and they didn't know how to take it because the guys were put on blast, being on cameras.
Well,
and I just thought, just because you can, should you?
For years. I'm talking.
And so women will say, well, I can do this, right, but should you? See, because that's wisdom to me. Wisdom is not just always being right. It's doing what's right.
And for years now, we've been talking about this role that we knew this was going to happen. Like, we've been on the show for a little while now, and we saw it happening where women are creeping out of their roles. Been going on for a while now, and we could see how it was going to end up. It was going to end up what we're seeing now, where men are starting to be like, look, I'm done. I'm over it. I'm over it. Okay. I'm a man. This is what I am. Deal with it, woman, and then you get an Andrew Tate. When you start hitting the forces against the male men being men, the male, just men just being men, and you start to kind of battle that, and you try to, push through that. I'm the woman, and I can do what you can do, and all this stuff. What you're gonna get is a Andrew Tate who is on the far extreme. He is young men's kind of answer to all of this BS going on. Now, I do not agree with Andrew Tate in a lot of ways. What I do agree with Andrew Tate is that he is, I guess, making a case for men.
He's a desperate attempt he fills a vacuum. So like there's going to be whenever he takes something out, there's a vacuum, there's a hole.
Right.
And if you don't fill it, it has to be filled with something. And if you take away what was working, because you got tired of it or whatever, something's going to fill that vacuum, that hole. And what's going to fill it is then somebody who comes in that isn't necessarily right or wrong, but makes a lot more sense than what's going on over here. Because, the funny thing about the red pill community is that it's not just men. A lot of women are getting red pilled. There are a lot of women saying, I'm red pilled.
Yeah.
You know why? Because they're getting sick of this.
It's not good.
It's not good. There's something very demonic and off about it. And everyone does kind of know it. If you look at a lot of these feminists that fight at these women's marches, you can just look at them and see that there's something unhappy about them. They're not happy. And they know it too, but they don't really know why they're unhappy, because when you go and ask them questions about why they're there, they can't, most of them can't even tell you why.
Right. And I can tell you why they're unhappy. It's because they're out of their role.
Yeah.
And, whenever you, I don't know how many times I have to say, whenever you exit outside of your role as a woman, that is going to create some anger within you, because now you're having to do something that's not natural to you. You're doing something that's completely unnatural. You're over here loudmouth and, just cussing and sexually explicit. You're all these things that a normal, demure, kind of like, modest woman, the energy of a woman is supposed to be delicate. It's supposed to be fair and
comforting.
It's not supposed to be hardened and angry. So when you decide, hey, you know what? F you, men. I can do that too. You're completely out of your womanhood. You're
Right.
completely out of it. You're into some other weird realm of, feminist.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're saying is that there is nothing feminine about feminists.
Every woman in here right now, they probably won't say it publicly, but one day they would like to be married to a man who makes more money than them and will give them an opportunity to raise kids without having to have a job on their own. Every single one of you, I think that's true.
That sounds
you might
really
not say
boring, and I'm speaking as a person with 3
I'm
kids.
telling
so
you, it's true.
if you have sat
It's
home with
true.
your children all day, you're like, wow, look, give me
I'm
some more of
not
that.
saying I want to
Anyway.
stay home with kids all day. I'm saying you want the opportunity to do it. That's true. And if you're not thinking it yet, you will be at some point. And that's because biology is real, which Democrats also don't believe.
Okay, let's not rise. You're doing too many provocations.
Too much all at once.
It's too much all at once.
truth all at
Let's
once. I
slow
get it.
down the provocations.
I get it. You guys
I wanna
don't
go
get this
back.
off.
Again, this is a feminist who's pretending like she's happy and she's not. And she didn't even let him finish. She let him talk all the other times. But the instant he said the truth, that most women, and
She's
this is
uncomfortable.
true.
She's getting out of her seat.
See, she got out of her seat.
She's
and everything.
literally out of her seat.
The entire time this man has been talking, she's let there and let him say what he has to say.
That bothered her.
But that bothered her. And why does that bother her? Because she knows it's true. The vast majority of women, even if they work, don't want their husband to make less than them.
I wouldn't. So
Okay.
now the proof that he is right is the new Tradwife.
Right.
So the hashtag and this new movement of traditional wife is what it means. Tradwives are on the internet. Now these women are basically showing other people, look, we've seen enough of the feminist stuff. Let me show you what's going on in my home. This is how we have a traditional way of living. He makes more money than me, or he makes the money, period. Traditional wives don't even work. They usually just stay home and take care of the kids. They take care of the home. They're homemakers. They take care of that, and then he goes out there and he makes the money and brings back. And guess what guess what happens with that? A balanced home with happy kids. This is the norm. This is overwhelmingly. There's been enough studies done at this point to see that when it's have traditional roles, when the man goes to work and the woman stays home with the kids and takes care of that, it has been completely. It's like you can't even compare it. It works. It works. And I'm not even saying 100% of the time. I'm just saying that it works majority of the time. And so when you have a man like this who just says something logical, sensible, and accurate, which she knows is why she's out of her seat now. This woman has not moved her butt out of that seat this entire time until he started talking about the money thing and started talking about the traditional wife thing. It started making her uncomfortable.
No, she's profanity. She's an effing boring.
That's effing
like she
boring.
got really mad
Out of line.
because she's out of
line.
order. She's out of her role.
She's out of line.
She is what the new grandma is.
And that's just what
You know,
bothers
and that's
me.
just sad,
And
you
the
know?
young girls laughing. The young girls like laugh, the sarcastic laugh, like, oh, that's just craziness, right? And it's like, no, it's not. It really is not craziness. What he's saying is actually pretty accurate.
Here's a man right now who is speaking in front of a crowd of people who don't agree with him.
Yeah.
But he's strong enough as a man to
stand
tell
in
the
that,
truth.
yeah.
And here's a woman that's supposed to be some feminist, a strong woman, who can't sit down and can't challenge him.
Yeah.
She just makes fun of it and gets up because she's weak. Women are weak in this position. We weaken ourselves. We hold ourselves back. Feminism holds women back. It makes them unhappy, lonely, frustrated.
Yeah.
And women, I can tell you in a minute, most women would rather climb into bed with this man than Tim Walz.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And why? Because when this man talks, he's not even big and strong. Like,
No.
You know what I mean? But there is something about his
a masculine
an
mentality,
aim
yeah.
in his life.
This older woman's messing up this woman in the black here because she's confirmed. She's helping her. She's giving her confirmation, like she's giving her like that she's right. See, I knew it. It's an older woman saying it. She has wisdom. No, she's telling you not to be a woman. and you're falling for it, and it's going to result usually in you not having a man, a husband, no children, and then you're going to die on the hill of money and career, and then you're going to be unhappy with that. Then you're going to see you later on protesting outside with a sign singing, which side are you on?
Right.
I'll link this video. We couldn't get through the whole video. It's like over an hour. I'll link that in the description box so you guys can see the entire conversation. It was actually pretty interesting. But yeah, you guys, let us know what you think about all this. You know, I feel like men are becoming more conservative, you know, because they really aren't getting heard. And this is kind of like a no-brainer. Like, why would you stay on the left if you're being heard on the right? Just saying. All right, so leave some comments below, and that's it. We'll see you guys next week.